tech layoffs, and there's changes happening to businesses throughout the community, and it's a reason for that. Make sure you hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. Let me keep you up to date on what's happening.
New at 10 tonight, some major tech companies have announced another round of job cuts. Google, Amazon, and Snap are among the companies continuing to downsize. KTVU South Bay reporter LaMonica Peters live now in Mountain View at Google headquarters with more on this latest round of layoffs. LaMonica.
Julie, the analysts I spoke with say these companies are simply evaluating their bottom lines, and the job cuts that they are having right now are simply to shore up their companies and to make sure that they are still making their profits.
The data that's come out has shown that the tech industry has been laying off people really pretty aggressively.
Google, Amazon, Snap, and Zillow say they're making more cuts to their workforce. Neither Google nor Amazon disclosed how many jobs were being cut this time. Tech reporter and analyst Ian Scher says the cuts are most likely continuing fallout from the pandemic.
The way the economy has worked has shifted a lot over those last 4 years. We've seen inflation come up. Now we've seen it start going down. We've seen interest rates going up, all of these types of things. So it is somewhat part of the natural cycle to see layoffs in some companies.
Amazon's most recent layoffs will affect employees in Europe, Latin America, and North America. This is also the fifth round of job cuts for Google since September and the third round of cuts for its parent company, Alphabet.
The 9-county Bay Area lost, almost 17,000 jobs last month, which was the, worst job loss we saw, monthly job loss we saw since Omicron hit in late 2020, early 2021.
Both Snap and Zillow are also cutting about 24 jobs from their workforce. Royce says interest rates are at a 22-year high, and companies will continue to make cost-cutting decisions.
Still, many companies are making decisions around these high interest rates, which of course keeps the economy growing more slowly, and reduces, companies' need to hire more people or retain people.
Now, Scher also said that sometimes these layoffs are not related to economic issues. He says sometimes companies have a division or a project that's no longer viable, so they have to make those job cuts. Julie?
Now, let me add a little bit of context to this, is because they're speaking about the company overall, but they're not saying where those job cuts are happening within the company. So it's a couple different things that you mine out from this, and then you'll start to understand exactly what happens. These companies are still hiring. Let me say it again. These companies are still hiring for the right positions. Talent will always triumph when it comes to the job cuts or the growth of a company. They may be shifting responsibilities, but they're definitely hiring. For example, Amazon has multiple different divisions, and in certain spaces within Amazon, they're no longer needing certain types of workers. I remember when the first round of layoffs was happening and it was all big news and stuff. It's not as big news anymore, but it was all big news and stuff. And I remember that Google had laid off 5 masseuse workers. Google had laid off a bunch of masseuse workers, the censorship teams. Amazon didn't need as many logistics workers. They are now powering a lot of things with artificial intelligence and robots, and they're starting to innovate to where they don't need as many workers to do the same monotonous roles that they can then fill with something that may or may not necessarily be necessary for them. I know one specific industry that's laying off, or one specific job role that has been being laid off, is marketing. Marketing departments are starting to cut back, or they're seeing challenges within growth within these particular segments of companies because innovation has allowed for them to be able to move a little bit differently. I'll give you an example. Elon Musk has never had a marketing or department where, questions, inquiries, press releases, any of that. You know what he uses? Twitter. X, formerly known as Twitter. The way that they communicate upcoming product launches, how they address certain issues, they was using X, formerly known as Twitter. And so he was the marketing department. He was the person that everybody followed. That largely came from a Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs was so worshipped. When he did a reveal, or he would do, whatever it is that he would do as far as revealing a new product and stuff like that, he went straight to the consumer. He then bypassed all of this other stuff, the middlemen, that allowed for him to be able to communicate more effectively. He wasn't dependent on the news department anymore. Social media made it easier for you to go direct to consumer with your concerns, or anything or anything you needed to say to them, as far as in real time addressing whatever it is that it took in order to communicate, right? And so other companies then paid attention to that, and they pivoted. Then they said, you know what? We don't really need no marketing department either, unless we want to say a social media marketing department, or a social media influencer, or this and that, or so on and so forth. But my point is that things are continuing to evolve, and companies are going to continue to change, innovate, make things easier for them to be able to operate business-wise. And if you are not continuing to upgrade your skill set, because they are still hiring for specific jobs, but it's just not the jobs that you think make sense for these industries. And you are going to be outdated. You are going to be removed. You are going to be laid off. It's going to be more difficult for you to be able to survive. Meanwhile, innovation is happening all over the place, to where they're paying attention to consumer trends. Let me show you what's happening even within the fast food and restaurant industry. Matter of fact, we're going to go specifically over into the closures that's happening over in Chicago.
Since the peak of COVID, we've been tracking stores and restaurants closing on Michigan Avenue. New at 10, a new Mag Mile closure, a restaurant popular for locals and tourists alike. Our Maribel Gonzalez is live at the Grand Lux Cafe.
Reading super chat shortly.
Yeah, Joe and Erica, after 21 years of operating here along the Mag Mile, this multi-story restaurant is saying goodbye and joining the other iconic spots here, who have also closed their doors in the past year. The news upsetting to many.
I'm really disappointed.
I'm a little shocked.
Upset diners leaving the Grand Lux Cafe, but it's not because of the food.
I didn't realize this was my last meal here.
Rather, because they're learning their tasty spot on East Ontario Street and Michigan Avenue is closing for good.
Disappointed that it's going to close.
Thursday, the company said its last day open would be December 24th, adding that they've enjoyed being a part of the downtown Chicago community and hope their guests will continue to dine with them at their other restaurants in the area.
My fiance is actually upstairs, so she'll be disappointed when I go back and tell her we may not be back, or we got to hurry up and return.
The news of this closure coming just weeks after the famed signature room at the John Hancock also closed for good. The iconic spot just steps away from the Mag Mile. Retail vacancy is now at around 30%.
The Magnificent Mile retail vacancy is now at above 30%. Wow. That's almost 1/3 of every single business that used to be on the Magnificent Mile, which was a tourist attraction and destination, is now closed. Interesting. So wait a minute. As a politician that has no business experience, a lot of these politicians that are in y'all area, what their job is to do the thing that's in the best interest of the people, which is to bring businesses in, increase tourism, make sure that the infrastructure is good, incentivize businesses to continue to hire people, doing the best thing that's in the interest of the residents. And if you have a 30% vacancy on the Magnificent Mile, wow, that's crazy. The Grand Lux Cafe, which is largely a part of, if I'm not mistaken, the Cheesecake Factory companies, they have the same thing, literally almost the same menu. Grand Lux Cafe, which is basically a cheesecake factory on steroids, right, is closing their doors all of a sudden. I wonder why. Are you telling me that Chicago is going the same way as San Francisco over here in the Midwest, though? Chicago is going the same way as San Francisco, except for over here in the Midwest, though? Wow. Say it ain't so. Say that Anton did not predict this. You cannot have crime running rampant, migrants sitting inside of the airport, migrants all over in tent cities. The code, you already got the code against you. And you telling me that the alderman and the mayor and the Illinois governor is not working on behalf of what's going on down here? King Colin, you're missing it as usual. King Colin, you're missing it as usual. It doesn't matter how you feel about the restaurant. We're talking about it being a representation of what is going on in a lot of these cities, urban communities, and places where businesses are now running away from instead of embracing. When you have so many factors working against you, eventually, because listen, now that we are starting to see an uptick and growth within our city, and a lot of these companies and a lot of these businesses and high-end stores is now opening up businesses downtown Detroit. I think Rihanna's, who is it, Fenty Savage, she opening up a store in downtown Detroit. Lululemon just upgraded. They had a store in downtown, but now they increased their presence here and they expanded their footprint, and so they moved into an even bigger spot down here. I know Gucci just recently opened up a store down here. It's a lot of places that's growing. So when cities grow or the tourist area is starting to evolve, the Riverwalk just opening up a new expanded space, it's a beautiful sight to see. Growth is good. And when cities start to contract or they start to get smaller or you see retailers running away from it, it is a sure sign that over in that particular area, there's going to be some form of a depression, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. It can't be good for the people. It's not going to be good for the residents. The taxpayers are the ones that's going to suffer as a result of it. And you cannot run the city itself without really looking at it from a business perspective and thinking that everything is going to go well. It's going to go bad. It's going to go bad. A 30% vacancy rate, over 30% vacancy rate, it's going bad. So shout out to all of my people in Chicago. Hold it down. Hold it down. Let me make sure that y'all get y'all love and everything that's going on out here in these streets.